A fake HOA cop shoved 72-year-old Coach Maggie, trying to force her off her own property. Hired by corrupt HOA president Carla Denton, this thug thought intimidation would win the day. But Margaret had a secret weapon, years of MMA training and a grandson who uncovered the truth. And just wait until you see how this showdown ended, and why justice came down harder than anyone expected. James Parker was halfway through his Saturday coffee when his phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. He almost let it go to voicemail, until he saw the name, Lacey Parker. His cousin never called this early. He picked up. Lacey's voice was tight, on the verge of panic. "Grandma just got shoved to the ground by some fake cop from the HOA. The words hit like ice water. James shot upright, heart racing. "What? Is she okay? Where are you?" Lacey sobbed once, then caught her breath. "At her house. Please come, fast." James didn't even hang up. The phone slid into his pocket as he grabbed his keys and ran out the door. His grandmother, Margaret Parker, or Coach Maggie, as the whole town knew her, was 72. Tougher than most people half her age. Twice a week she ran free women's self-defense and MMA classes at Willow Lake's gym. But no amount of training made what he'd just heard sit right. Someone had attacked his grandmother, in broad daylight. By the time James sped into Willow Lakes, neighbors were gathered in clusters along Grandma's white picket fence. Several were on their phones. A few were visibly shaken. He jumped out of his truck. Lacey ran to meet him. "She's inside. She won't go to the hospital. Says she's fine." James rushed through the front door and stopped. There she was, sitting calmly at her kitchen table, pressing an ice pack to her elbow. Her lip was split, a small trail of dried blood on her chin, but her eyes burned with a cold, steady fire. James knelt beside her. "Grandma, what happened?" She sighed through her nose. "A man, big guy, vest said HOA Compliance Patrol. Never seen him before. Said my porch railing was unsafe and had to be torn down today." James frowned. "Did he show any paperwork?" Margaret gave a small, sharp laugh. "Nope. When I asked for ID, he started yelling. Then before I could move, he shoved me back against the railing, hard. Walked off like he owned the place." James's jaw clenched. His mind was already racing. Compliance patrol? That wasn't legal. HOA boards didn't have police powers. Just then, an older neighbor, Mrs. Duval, peeked through the door. "I saw it all, James," she said. "That man, he's not with the county or the sheriff. I checked. His name's Rick Boland. He's been hanging around the HOA president's house for weeks. People say he's, well, trouble." James's hands tightened into fists. Rick Boland. He'd heard the name. A local hothead known for intimidation gigs around construction sites, and now hired muscle for the HOA president, Carla Denton. Margaret set down the ice pack. Her voice was low but steady. "He thinks he can push me?" she said quietly. "He just signed up for a whole lot more than he knows." James met her gaze. The fight had already started. It didn't take long. By the time the sun set that evening, a shaky cell phone video of Rick Boland shoving Coach Maggie was circulating through Willow Lake's neighborhood Facebook group. The footage wasn't perfect, but it was enough. There was Margaret, calm and standing her ground. And there was Rick, towering over her, barking orders. Then, the moment, a brutal shove that sent Margaret stumbling against her own porch railing. The comment section exploded. "Who is this guy? Why wasn't the sheriff called? We don't even have an HOA police. That's Coach Maggie. This is outrageous." In a matter of hours, outrage swept the small lakeside community. Longtime residents and newcomers alike voiced their fury. But across town, inside the HOA office, Carla Denton was crafting a very different narrative. Carla, polished, calculating, had never liked Margaret. For months, she'd been pressuring the elderly homeowner to sell her charming lakefront property. The HOA had plans: demolish Margaret's place, package the land with 2 neighboring lots, and flip it to a well-connected developer for triple the value. Margaret had refused. Again and again. Now, with her patience worn thin, Carla had found a workaround. Rick Boland. A man with no badge, no training, and no authority. Just muscle. When the video backlash began, Carla doubled down. She posted an official HOA statement online. Mrs. Parker unfortunately became hostile toward a compliance officer authorized to enforce emergency safety violations. The HOA stands behind our enforcement team. The gaslighting was blatant, and it backfired spectacularly. Comments poured in beneath the post, furious. Hostile? She was asking for ID. You hired an enforcer with no legal right to touch her. We stand with Coach Maggie. Behind the scenes, Carla pushed Rick to apply more pressure. Margaret had to be convinced to leave. But neither Carla nor Rick had the slightest idea who they were dealing with. That Friday evening, instead of lying low, Margaret opened the doors of Willow Lake's gym as usual for her weekly women's MMA class. But this time, the gym was packed. Word had spread. Mothers came. Veterans' wives came. Young men who'd grown up watching Coach Maggie teach self-defense came. Even local reporters showed up, cameras in tow. Margaret stood at the center of the mat in her familiar gray sweats, calm as ever. Tonight, she told the class, her voice steady but fierce, we're going back to basics. Balance, defense, control. We don't start fights. She paused, letting the silence hang. But when one comes to us, we finish it. Legally, properly, publicly. The room broke into applause. The cameras kept rolling. The fight was no longer private. And Margaret Parker was just getting started. James Parker wasn't one to sit on the sidelines. He'd spent nearly a decade as a licensed private investigator, digging up hidden contracts, corporate fraud, and background checks. Now, this was personal. 2 hours after the video of Rick Boland's shove went viral, James opened his files and started pulling every thread he could find on Rick. It didn't take long. Rick Boland's name showed up in multiple court records, 3 prior assault charges, 2 dismissed on technicalities, 1 settled out of court. No police academy record, no security license, no legal right to act as any kind of enforcement officer, especially not on behalf of a neighborhood HOA. But the deeper James dug, the uglier it got. A paper trail led to a shell company, Lakeside Property Services, LLC, recently created and controlled through an account linked to none other than Carla Denton's personal attorney. Payments to Rick were listed as consulting fees, paid in cash, off the books, no liability coverage, no HOA board vote, pure backroom muscle, bought and paid for. Armed with hard evidence, James reached out to the county sheriff's office. He forwarded everything, court records, payment trails, even Rick's fake compliance patrol patches. The sheriff's office opened a case within hours, but James wasn't finished. He knew Rick, and likely Carla, would try again. And this time, Margaret wouldn't face them alone. Meanwhile, Margaret was preparing in her own way. Each morning she quietly ran drills in her backyard. Balance, footwork, controlled holds. She wasn't looking for a fight, but if it came, she'd be ready. And sure enough, it came. 2 days later, late afternoon. A battered SUV pulled up in front of Margaret's home. Out stepped Rick Boland, flanked by 2 more broad-shouldered men in the same fake HOA compliance patrol vests. This time, Rick wasn't bluffing. He strode up the walkway with his entourage, loud enough for the entire street to hear. He barked, "Mrs. Parker, you need to vacate this property for your own safety, immediately." But Rick wasn't the only one ready. Word had spread. A local TV crew had arrived minutes earlier, camera already rolling. Several neighbors stood across the street, phones out, recording every second. And there was Margaret, standing tall at the top of her porch steps, dressed in simple gym wear, eyes clear and unflinching. She calmly stepped down onto the walkway, rolled her shoulders once, and faced Rick head-on. "Rick," she said evenly, "you're trespassing. Leave now." But Rick was already reaching out, a hand darting toward her arm. The crowd gasped. In a flash, Margaret moved, sidestepping with precision, locking Rick's outstretched arm in a seamless joint hold. Before anyone could react, the towering man was flat on the grass, face down, arm pinned in a clean, controlled restraint. Not a punch thrown, not a knee bent, just flawless technique. For a split second, the scene was silent. Then the crowd erupted in cheers. Rick's two accomplices froze, unsure what to do, until a set of sirens pierced the air. Sheriff's deputies, already alerted by James, pulled up at full speed. Within seconds, deputies stepped in, handcuffs ready. Margaret calmly released her hold and backed away. Rick Boland, red-faced and breathless, was promptly cuffed and read his rights, on camera for the entire town to witness. The fight wasn't over yet, but Margaret Parker had just won a very public round. The deputies wasted no time. With the cameras rolling and half the neighborhood watching, Rick Boland and his two fake compliance patrol enforcers were swiftly handcuffed and read their rights, charged with impersonating law enforcement and assault. As Rick was led to the waiting patrol car, neighbors clapped and cheered. Phones captured every angle. The footage would soon flood social media. But justice wasn't finished yet. Later that same afternoon, a pair of county detectives arrived at Carla Denton's well-manicured home. Carla had been trying to maintain her usual poise, confident that her connections would shield her from any fallout. Then she opened the door to find two plainclothes officers standing on her front step. "Ma'am," one said calmly, "you're being served a warrant for conspiracy to commit assault and employing unlicensed security personnel." The color drained from Carla's face. The smug smile she'd worn for months vanished in an instant. By sundown, the news was everywhere. The footage of Coach Maggie calmly disarming and restraining Rick on her lawn became the top clip on local news, and far beyond. Within hours, the headline trended across national feeds. 72-year-old MMA grandma schools fake HOA cop. Viewers around the country watched, amazed, as the story unfolded. An elder standing her ground, a corrupt HOA exposed, the power of calm strength and legal justice on full display. The impact was swift and wide-reaching. Within a week, the county formally dissolved all private enforcement contracts associated with the Willow Lakes HOA. The HOA board, under mounting legal pressure, was forced to suspend operations. State investigators launched a broader probe into HOA corruption and unlawful intimidation tactics. And Margaret Parker? She went right back to her element. Her next MMA class at Willow Lakes Gym saw record attendance, triple the usual size. Mothers, grandmothers, young professionals, all inspired by what they'd seen. Many were first-timers, eager to learn from the woman who had stood tall against bullying and won. As the class gathered that evening, Margaret greeted them with her trademark calm smile. She looked around the packed room, then spoke. "Don't be afraid to stand your ground, but learn how to do it the right way." The words rang out, not just as advice for martial arts, but as a life lesson for everyone listening. From the back of the gym, James Parker watched quietly, pride swelling in his chest. Justice had been served, and his grandmother had shown the entire town, and the internet, that real strength doesn't always come from fists. Sometimes it comes from standing your ground with wisdom, skill, and courage.